We've just lived through the world's hottest day on record, and it's got some experts pretty worried. Here's Joe.
These are the scenes in parts of Australia right now, which makes it hard to believe that up in the Northern Hemisphere, things are looking more like this. Yeah, it's really hot up there.
Hello, I'm Paul Barry. Welcome to Media Watch. And another alarming climate record, with the University of Maine claiming 2 weeks ago that Monday, the 3rd of July, was the hottest day the world has ever seen. Tuesday the 4th being even hotter, and Thursday the 6th hotter still. And 1 week later, the US space agency NASA and 2 other climate watchers hailed another scary milestone.
And this is somewhat alarming. Now, NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, says Earth just had its hottest June since global records began in 1850. That's 174 years.
And as climate solutions expert Professor Rachel Kite told CNN, it's not just Europe and North America sweating it out.
We've got extraordinary temperatures in the oceans all the way up into the Arctic, and we've seen extreme heat across South Asia, Southeast Asia as well. So it's global. And it is a disaster foretold. We've been warning about this, the scientists have been warning us about this, and now it's here. So extreme heat is not something that we should be worried about into the future. We are losing people to extreme heat today.
2023 is also said to be the hottest year on record, topping all of the past 8 years, which currently hold the crown for being the hottest ever recorded. You get the picture? It's getting hotter and hotter every year and happening fast. And if figures don't convince you, then try watching the news.
2,000 people forced to flee their homes in the Spanish Canary Islands. Red alerts in 16 Italian cities. Wildfires have been raging for months in parts of Canada. While in the US, more than a third of the population are now living under extreme heat advisories. And
what is the reason for it all? Ask NASA, the UK Met Office, the CSIRO, the UN, in fact, just about anyone, and this is the answer.
Behind it all, of course, is the effect of climate change pushing out the temperature extremes. So what climate change gives us is longer heat waves and higher peaks. So some of the temperatures we've been experiencing this week in southern Europe are almost 10 degrees above normal.
So, what do the commentators at News Corp, who love to downplay the dangers of man-made global warming, have to say? On Sky News, the Australian's Chris Kenny was scathing.
It turns out a climate change mob in the US has declared that Monday was the hottest day for the planet in all of history. Now, you can get alarmed about this stuff if you like, and that's certainly what our own Climate Council want you to do. Take a look at this hysterical take on Twitter. They really do want to scare us, don't they? Me, I'd be very sceptical about the methods employed here. How long have they been deploying them?
Well, Chris, the Climate Institute at the University of Maine has been doing it for a decade. But it's crunched the data for much longer than that, as the Washington Post reported.
Tuesday's global average temperature was calculated by a model that uses data from weather stations, ships, ocean buoys and satellites. This modelling system has been used to estimate daily average temperatures starting in 1979.
And if you look at the chart, you can see the curve is rising. The middle dotted line shows temperatures from 1979 to 2000. The solid top line, rising above the others, is 2023. But Kenny's colleague at Sky, Rowan Dean, wasn't interested in that evidence either. He just wanted to ridicule putting a time on it.
Hottest days ever? Don't believe it, says Steve. Average global temperature is a meaningless measure, and comparisons to 125,000 years ago are preposterous.
The Steve that Dean was parroting is Steve Milloy, writing in the Wall Street Journal, another News Corp publication. And who is he? A former lobbyist for the tobacco industry and coal industry, and a director of the Heartland Institute, which questions the reality of climate change. Milloy is one of the journal's columnists on climate, but not the only one to rubbish the heating planet. Other recent columns have claimed
a simple fan can fix the hottest day.
And read the Canadian wildfires.
That's smoke, not climate change.
Back in Australia, other Murdoch commentators were also denying any crisis, with Andrew Bolt looking past the latest records, fires and heat waves to proclaim,
finally, proof that net zero is bonkers.
assuring us it's pointless to do anything about the climate crisis, which he says isn't real, and telling us once again that
global warming is a massively exaggerated problem, and that attempts to stop it are both useless and a grotesque waste of billions of dollars.
And the same line has been pushed by the Australian's former editor-in-chief, Chris Mitchell, who mocked the climate crisis in his column last November and accused left-wing journalists of being blind to the facts. While in March he was branding the crisis media hype on the basis of
the failure of a climate catastrophe, or anything like it, to arrive.
No word from him last week. But back on Sky, Rowan Dean was his busy self, finding more evidence that all this talk of hottest days and months and years was just nonsense, because it's been cold overnight in Australia.
Minus 10.8 degrees Celsius at Glen Innes in northern New South Wales. Minus 8.1 degrees in Goulburn.
What's more, said Dean, the week before there was some heavy snow in the Indian Himalayas.
Guess they didn't get the memo that it was the hottest day on planet Earth in 125,000 years.
Almost 2,000 years ago, it was Roman Emperor Nero who was accused of fiddling while Rome burned. Nowadays, as parts of planet Earth go up in smoke, it's the commentators at Murdoch's News Corp telling us there is no need to worry. If it weren't so serious, it would be funny. But it's not. It is a disgrace. And now to the sex ed book that's been pulled from the shelves and left radio shock jocks hopping mad.
Parents are sharing their outrage about the release of a new book called Welcome to Sex. But there's stuff in the book that'll just blow you away.
And Fordham's colleague at 3AW, Tom Elliott, was also concerned, claiming
it is bordering on the pornographic. It is graphic, it is over the top, it is much more of an adult's how-to guide than something for kids.
And what about Perth 6PR, another Nine-owned station? Was someone mad about it there? You bet.
That book, that sex book that was available in some major department stores for kids.
That's a bit inappropriate, isn't it?
I've had a look at it. It's way over the top.
Of course, outrage is the business model of talkback radio. And when you combine kids, sex and worried parents, it is guaranteed. So, what is it all about? The book, Welcome to Sex, is aimed at 11 to 15-year-olds, and it was published 2 months ago to little or no fuss, with author Yumi Steins telling Channel 9...
It's telling all the basic 101 information about what sex actually is within the safety of a book, because if you were to say Google it, you just never know what will come up.
The fourth in a series aimed at adolescents, Welcome to Sex, is co-authored by Dr Melissa Kang, who for 23 years penned the Dolly Doctor column in the teen mag Dolly, which folded in 2016.
Always questions about sex. Can you get pregnant from dry sex? Can you get pregnant from oral sex? Stuff like, what is a 69er? I've heard them talk about it. I don't know what it is.
Melissa Kang is also an associate professor in public health, and it's the hundreds of questions she answered from curious teenage girls over the years that formed the basis of the 300-page book, along with topics on puberty, body parts, gender identity and illustrated sex positions. And even Yumi Steins has admitted that it is not easy reading or appropriate for everyone.
I would recommend having a flick before you give it to a kid, because there's stuff that's very rudimentary, like, you know, how do I kiss? But there's also stuff like, you know, that's pretty grown up and they might not be ready to go.
In other words, confronting details about sex, which is why the ABC's Ellen Fanning was last week putting to Steins.
Let me ask you, why do you think kids as young as 11 need to know about penis size and all the many positions you can use to achieve oral sex?
They don't necessarily need to know at the age of 11, but the book is there when they start to get curious. And by the way, that bit about penis size was completely taken out of context. The question is, does penis size matter? And we say this is a myth, penis size does not matter.
Good news for all those male media commentators outraged by the book.
Stein's book, Sex Education, is more akin to porn. Any mum who is discussing with their child the sort of things that Steins has written about, in my view, should be reported to the Department of Community Services.
So, given the book was published in May, why was there so much heat about it last week? Short answer, the internet. Anger over the sex book first gained traction online when people suggested it was teaching children to have sex, which could lead them to being groomed by predatory adults. Yes, really. And turbocharging the leap from internet fringe to mainstream media was this video.
Welcome to Sex, a book sold at Big W and marketed towards your children. Size matters, talking about penis size. Scissoring, complete with illustrations. The lowdown on anal sex.
That video, posted across Twitter and Instagram by an internet agitator called Primod, came with a caption claiming Big W was grooming children. And hours after it was tweeted, Senator Ralph Babbitt from Clive Palmer's United Australia Party was calling on parents to protect their children and running a petition to, quote, save civilised society. Meantime, back on 2GB, Ben Fordham was directing his fury at the big retailers selling the forbidden fruit.
There is a very simple message here for Big W and Target. Get this book out of your stores.
And did the top-rating shock jock get his way? Well, yes, because Big W staff started copying abuse as a result of the media storm, leaving WSFM's Amanda Keller hot under the collar.
The media has made this a giant bushfire, and because of that, then people are going in, seeking out the book and complaining about it.
That may be so, but Yumi Steins did leave herself exposed with this April Instagram post suggesting her book could be OK for mature kids as young as 8, which most parents would agree is far too young. For her efforts, Steins says she's copped a heap of abuse.
So I've had death threats. I've had threats on my safety. I've had a lot of people just calling me abusive words and names, and it's been quite a deluge.
And over the weekend, New South Wales Police arrested and charged a 23-year-old man for online harassment. But of course, moral panic in the media over sex ed books for kids is as old as the hills. In 2009, it was about an updated version of Where Did I Come From?, which had family groups furious that it was teaching kids
about lesbian mums getting pregnant using sperm donors.
And critics stirring up controversy over
a drawing of 2 gay men holding a baby.
Lucky we're all still here. As Giselle Woodley, a researcher in public health, wrote in the 9 papers about this latest media storm.
If it's not the right resource for your family, then by all means, don't buy it. But please, for the rest of us, leave the torches and pitchforks in the shed.
And what has the book Backlash done for sales? They're rocketing, with the Sydney Morning Herald reporting it has
topped Amazon's bestseller list, and some local bookshops are running out of copies.
Which I guess just shows that parents are smart enough to ignore the media panic, read the book themselves and make up their own minds. But now, let's go on the holiday of a lifetime with Scenic Cruises, a big advertiser on 9, which is a sponsor of The Breakfast Show.
Today, brought to you by Scenic, Europe river cruising in a class of its own.
Donates expensive competition prizes.
Your final chance to enter our incredible Scenic Cruise competition.
And supports 9's travel show Getaway by being a major sponsor and big advertiser and getting its luxury cruises constantly featured.
This week on Getaway, I'm on a gastronomic, culinary and totally delicious river cruise with Scenic through the Bordeaux region.
And who wouldn't want to join in? But this enduring and lucrative relationship between 9 and Scenic has some nasty barnacles, as this 7 News report revealed in 2016.
It promises a luxurious experience along the grand waterways of Europe, but for more than 1,000 disgruntled passengers who booked with Scenic Tours, it was anything but a dream holiday.
As MediaWatch reported at the time, that important travel story was completely ignored by 9, even though some 1,200 customers, who paid thousands of dollars, were suing Scenic in a class action after flooding in Europe ruined their dream cruise and saw them shunted onto buses and into dud hotel rooms. So, why are we revisiting this story? Because after almost 10 years fighting for compensation, passengers have finally won the class action, with Scenic agreeing to settle the case and cough up $26 million in damages and costs. The lawyer who helped win the battle told MediaWatch it was a hard-fought victory, with millions of dollars in legal fees, and that Scenic Cruises
took us to every court, the Supreme Court, Court of Appeal, twice, the High Court, and they were threatening to take us to the High Court again.
So, was news of this terrific victory featured on 9's Getaway? Strangely not. And what about on 9's TV news bulletins, or in the 9 papers, which also benefit from Scenic ads? No again, despite 3 9 reporters at the Sydney Morning Herald, the Australian Financial Review and 9 News being sent the press release about the victory. But weeks later, we're pleased to say the AFR has got a story on Scenic with this glossy feature on the man who built the company.
Scene stealer.
Meet the boy from Newcastle who took on the Goliaths of the $11.6 billion international cruise market.
Yes, page after page in this month's AFR magazine promoting the founder of Scenic Cruises, Aussie businessman Glenn Moroney, with multiple lush photos of the scenic experience by a writer who was a guest of Scenic Cruises. And did that 2,700-word story have time to mention the 10-year class action against the company and those pissed-off passengers? I think you know the answer to that. We asked Nine why it hasn't covered the class action settlement and whether it's to do with the huge amount of money that Scenic spends with the media group. It told us,
the insinuation by Media Watch that the whole of Nine's various news outlets have deliberately ignored a story for commercial reasons is offensive. And we note that the ABC appears to have not reported on the story, along with most other outlets.
It is indeed true the settlement is being ignored by the mainstream media. But given that Nine continues to spruik the wonders of Scenic Cruises, it surely has a responsibility to warn of the pitfalls too. That's all from us for tonight. Don't forget Media Bites on Facebook, YouTube and Instagram. But for now, until next week, goodbye.